The annual family barbecue at Jake's family estate was supposed to be another perfect gathering. Burgers sizzling on the grill, cold beers in hand, and laughter filling the backyard. Even after 5 years of marriage, I still felt like the perpetual outsider trying to earn my place at the table. Jake's sister Melissa always found subtle ways to remind me I did not belong. This time, she raised her glass during dinner and announced, "If you disappeared tomorrow, Rachel, no one would even notice." Everyone erupted in laughter. Everyone except me. I simply raised my hot dog and said, "Challenge accepted." Before I dive into how I turned this painful moment into my greatest triumph, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories about reclaiming your power. I grew up in a small town in Idaho with dreams bigger than my surroundings. My childhood was quiet but lonely. My parents, though loving, were distant people who valued independence above all else. What I craved more than anything was connection, a sense of belonging, a family that gathered for holidays and remembered your birthday without reminders. I wanted tradition, warmth, and the security of knowing your place in the world was permanent and valued. When I met Jake at a friend's wedding 6 years ago, he seemed to be the gateway to everything I had ever wanted. He was charming, attentive, and came from a large, tight-knit family that appeared picture-perfect from the outside. The Hamiltons owned a successful local business, lived in a beautiful colonial home passed down through generations, and hosted legendary gatherings where everyone in town hoped to receive an invitation. Our romance was a whirlwind. 3 months of dating led to a proposal, and I said yes without hesitation. I was not just marrying Jake. I was marrying into the family I had always wanted. During our engagement, there were warning signs I chose to ignore. Like when his mother, Deborah, complimented my homemade pie at our first dinner together, then immediately followed with, "You know, Jake's grandmother won blue ribbons for her crust. Perhaps I can teach you her technique sometime." Or how his sister Melissa always managed to bring up past family jokes and memories that excluded me, creating a bubble of laughter I could observe but never enter. Jake's father, Gerald, barely acknowledged my presence, speaking to me through Jake, as though I were not sitting at the same table. "Tell your girl she should try the roast beef," he would say to Jake, despite me sitting directly across from him. And Jake, my Jake, always laughed these moments off. "That is just Dad being old-fashioned," or "Melissa has always been competitive with my girlfriends." He promised me they would warm up once we were married. I believed him. For 5 years, I tried everything to be accepted. I learned to cook every Hamilton family recipe, memorizing each ingredient and technique under Deborah's critical eye. I never missed a single gathering, even postponing an important work presentation to attend a distant cousin's baby shower. I helped plan family events, created personalized gifts, and kept track of every birthday, anniversary, and milestone. I became the unofficial family photographer, making sure their precious moments were captured, though I appeared in very few images myself. Meanwhile, my career as a graphic designer flourished outside the Hamilton bubble. I had built an impressive client list, and even won a regional award for my work with a nonprofit organization. No one in Jake's family attended the ceremony. When I brought home the glass trophy, Melissa asked if it was a new vase for the entryway, and Jake changed the subject to his father's golf tournament victory from the previous weekend. 3 months before the barbecue incident, I suffered a miscarriage. We had been trying for a baby for over a year, and the loss devastated me. The timing coincided with the annual Hamilton family vacation to their lake house. Jake suggested we still attend, saying, "The distraction will be good for you." When we arrived, no one mentioned my loss. Instead, Deborah complained that I did not help enough with meal preparations while I was still physically recovering. Gerald questioned if I was making too big a deal of these things when I excused myself from boating because of cramping. Jake stayed on the boat with his family. That night, I overheard Melissa talking to Jake on the dock. "She is bringing everyone down, Jake. Maybe she should have stayed home if she is going to be like this." Jake's response haunts me still. "I know. I will talk to her." He never did. He came to bed, held me, and told me everything would be fine. By the time the summer barbecue arrived, I was existing in a fog of depression and isolation. Jake and I were sleeping in the same bed, but living separate lives. He was spending more time at his parents' house helping with business matters that never seemed to resolve. I attended therapy alone, trying to process my grief both for the baby and for the family connection I was starting to realize might never exist. Still, hope is a stubborn thing. The morning of the barbecue, I woke up early to prepare my famous potato salad, the one dish that even Deborah had once reluctantly praised. I put on a sundress and a cheerful yellow applied makeup to hide the shadows under my eyes and practiced my smile in the bathroom mirror. Maybe today would be different. Maybe today I would finally belong. The Hamilton family backyard was transformed for their annual summer barbecue. Red and white checkered tablecloths covered long tables, American flags stuck out of centerpieces, and the scent of charcoal and grilled meat filled the air. Jake's father, Gerald, manned the massive grill spatula in one hand, beer in the other, holding court like a king in his domain. Deborah fluttered between the kitchen and yard, directing the placement of dishes with military precision. I entered the yard carrying my potato salad, Jake's hand on the small of my back in a rare public display of support. "Look who finally decided to show up," Melissa called out, though we were only 10 minutes late because Jake had forgotten his phone and made us turn around. "We were about to send a search party," she added, with a tight smile that never reached her eyes. "Sorry we are late," Jake said immediately, dropping his hand from my back to accept a beer from his father. I placed my potato salad on the designated table, noticing it was positioned far from the main dishes next to the store-bought rolls and a half-empty bag of chips. The afternoon progressed with the usual family dynamics. Deborah criticized the neighbor's new fence while serving 2 sweet lemonade. Gerald told the same fishing stories he shared every summer, each time increasing the size of his catch. Jake transformed into a louder, more boisterous version of himself around his family, laughing too hard at inside jokes and reminiscing about childhood pranks. I drifted between conversation groups, always on the periphery, nursing the same glass of wine for hours. Around 4 o'clock, everyone gathered at the long tables for the main meal. I found myself seated between Jake's teenage niece, who was glued to her phone, and his elderly aunt, who was hard of hearing. The conversation turned to Jake's cousin Bryce, who was going through a messy divorce. She left him for her personal trainer, Melissa, shared with barely disguised glee. Just packed up one weekend while he was on a business trip. Poor Bryce came home to half-empty closets and divorce papers on the kitchen counter. "That is cold," Jake's brother-in-law said, shaking his head. "Who does that women today do not understand commitment?" Gerald grumbled. "In my day, you worked through your problems." I stared at my plate, pushing food around with my fork, thinking of all the problems Jake and I had not worked through, all the conversations we had not had. Then Melissa, 3 glasses of wine into the afternoon, looked directly at me for perhaps the first time that day. "Speaking of disappearing acts," she said, her voice carrying across the table, silencing other conversations. "If you disappeared tomorrow, Rachel, no one would even notice." The silence that followed lasted only seconds before eruption of laughter broke out around the table. Gerald slapped the table. Deborah covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook with mirth. And Jake, my husband, laughed hardest of all until he glanced at my face, and his smile faltered. The sound seemed to come from underwater, distorted and distant. As I looked around at these people, this family I had tried so desperately to join for 5 years. In that moment, with perfect clarity, I saw the truth. I was not merely an outsider. I was invisible. A ghost haunting the edges of their perfect family narrative. I raised my hot dog in a mock toast and said, "Challenge accepted," in a tone so casual it surprised even me. The laughter trailed off awkwardly. Jake squeezed my knee under the table, a gesture meant to both comfort and silence. For the remainder of the barbecue, I observed the Hamilton family as if through new eyes. I noticed how Jake physically shifted away from me when his father approached, how Melissa deliberately excluded me from photo opportunities, how even the seating arrangement kept me at the margins. These were not accidents or coincidences. This was the design. The drive home was silent until Jake finally spoke. "You know, Melissa was just joking around. That is how she is. You should not take it so personally." "Is that what you think?" "That I am taking it personally?" I asked, watching the familiar streets pass by the passenger window. Everyone was just having fun. "It is not a big deal," Jake insisted, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "You have been so sensitive lately." I did not argue. What was the point? 5 years of evidence had presented itself, and the verdict was clear. Nothing would change, because nothing was wrong in their eyes. The problem was me, always me. That night, Jake fell asleep quickly, snoring softly beside me in our bed. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying not just the day but our entire marriage. Every slight, every exclusion, every moment Jake failed to stand up for me. And underneath it all, my own failure to stand up for myself. At 2 a.m., I slipped out of bed and moved with quiet purpose. I gathered essential documents, birth certificate, passport, financial statements. I packed one suitcase with practical clothing and the few sentimental items that were truly mine. I transferred half our joint savings to my personal account, an amount I knew I was legally entitled to. On the kitchen counter, I left a note. Challenge accepted. Do not look for me. Beside it, I placed my wedding ring, the diamond catching the dim light from the stove hood. By 3 a.m., I was driving with no destination in mind, watching our house disappear in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, I felt something breaking free inside me, a bird long caged, finally tasting open sky. The first week of my disappearance, I stayed at a budget motel off the interstate, 50 miles from the life I had left behind. The room smelled of industrial cleaner and the air conditioner rattled all night. But it was mine, a space where no one could make me feel small or unwanted. My first morning of freedom, I changed my phone number, created a new email address, and contacted my largest clients to inform them I was relocating but would continue working remotely. I was surprised by how supportive they were, how easily they accepted this sudden change without demanding explanations I was not ready to give. By the third day, my old phone had been disconnected, but not before I saw the progression of Jake's messages. They started with confusion. Where are you? Call me. Then shifted to anger. You cannot just leave like this. We need to talk. And finally, an attempt at emotional manipulation. My mother is worried sick about you. Please just let us know you are okay. Not once did he say he missed me. Not once did he apologize. Not once did he acknowledge why I might have left. The second week, I found a small furnished apartment in a neighboring state with a 6-month lease. I paid the security deposit with cash and used my maiden name. The building was nothing special, a mid-century complex with thin walls and outdated appliances, but the living room had a large window that bathed the space in morning light. I bought a plant, a peace lily, the first of many green things that would fill my new home. Through a mutual friend who owed me loyalty from college days, I learned the Hamilton family's reaction had evolved quickly. Initial confusion gave way to collective anger, then dismissal. She will come crawling back. Melissa had apparently said at a family dinner. Where else would she go? She has no one else. She was right about one thing. I had no one else. Years of prioritizing Jake's family had left my own relationships neglected. But instead of driving me back to the Hamiltons, this realization pushed me to rebuild what I had lost. I changed my appearance, first cutting my long brown hair into a stylish bob and highlighting it with caramel streaks. I replaced my wardrobe of muted tones, chosen to not outshine Melissa, with vibrant colors that made me feel alive. Small changes, but significant in reclaiming my identity. I found a therapist who specialized in emotional abuse and relationship trauma. During our first session, I could barely speak through my tears. By our fourth, I was beginning to recognize patterns I had been blind to for years. You were not invisible, she told me. You were being actively erased. 3 months after leaving, I filed for divorce through an attorney using my new address. The paperwork was delivered to Jake at his office to avoid family interference. His response came through my lawyer, a demand for a face-to-face meeting for an explanation. You owe me at least, that he wrote. My only reply, you already know why. I reconnected with college friends through social media, cautiously at first, afraid they would take Jake's side, or worse, that they had forgotten me entirely. Instead, I found many had been waiting for me to resurface. We tried to reach you for years, my former roommate told me over video chat, but you always had family obligations. The word family caught in my throat. They had never been my family. I had never been theirs. 6 months after my departure, the divorce was finalized. I legally reclaimed my maiden name, severing the last formal tie to the Hamilton family. The proceedings were surprisingly straightforward. Jake did not contest the division of assets, perhaps eager to end the embarrassment my departure had caused. Through industry connections, I heard rumors that Jake's family had been spreading about me, that I had mental health issues, that I had been unfaithful, that I had stolen from them. Attempts to damage my professional reputation backfired when clients defended my work ethic and integrity. My freelance business flourished without the constant drain of Hamilton family obligations. I pursued creative projects that previously I had no time for, developed a distinctive style that began attracting attention in design circles, and started teaching an online course in brand development that provided a steady, additional income. 9 months into my new life, an opportunity arose with a prestigious design firm on the West Coast. They had seen my portfolio and wanted me to lead a new department focused on nonprofit branding. The interview process was rigorous, but for the first time in years I felt confident in my abilities, undiminished by constant criticism. I got the job, packed my now thriving plant collection, and moved to a city where no one knew me as Jake's wife or the woman who disappeared. I was simply Rachel, the talented designer from the Midwest with innovative ideas and a quiet confidence. In this new city, I built connections that felt genuine. My apartment became a gathering place for colleagues who became friends. I joined a hiking group and discovered my body's strength beyond its appearance. I dated casually, learning to recognize red flags I had previously ignored, and eventually meeting Daniel, a kind architect who asked questions and remembered the answers, who made space for me without requiring me to shrink. The woman who had raised a hot dog in defeated acceptance was gone. In her place stood someone who recognized her worth, was not determined by others' ability to see it. 1 year after leaving the Hamilton family barbecue, I stood in a hotel ballroom in San Francisco, accepting an industry award for a rebranding campaign I had developed for a women's shelter. The irony was not lost on me. This campaign was personal, I told the audience. It is about becoming visible again, about reclaiming your story. At the reception following the ceremony, a familiar voice called my name. I turned to find Samantha, Jake's cousin, the one whose husband had recently left her for his trainer. She was working for a marketing firm that had partnered with mine on a recent project. "I thought it was you," she said, eyes wide with surprise. "You look amazing." The compliment felt genuine, without the undercurrent of competition that had colored interactions with the Hamilton women. We moved to a quiet corner with our champagne flutes, curiosity overcoming my initial instinct to flee. "How did you find me?" I asked, wondering if my carefully constructed new life was about to collapse. "I did not," she said. "Pure coincidence. I transferred to the San Francisco office 3 months ago. When they mentioned partnering with your firm, I never made the connection until I saw your name on the program tonight." An awkward silence fell between us, years of family dynamics creating an invisible barrier. Samantha broke it first. "I should tell you what happened. After you left, Jake moved back home. He is still there, actually, living in his old bedroom." She twisted her champagne flute between her fingers. "The family business is struggling. Your designs were apparently keeping things afloat more than anyone realized. They tried hiring other designers, but nothing matched what you were doing." I felt no satisfaction at this news, only a distant sadness for what could have been if they had valued me while I was there. "Melissa's husband left her 2 months ago," Samantha continued. "Said he could not stand the way she treated people. I think seeing how they all treated you, how no one stood up for you, it opened his eyes to things he had been ignoring. And Melissa, how did she take that? Not well. She blames everyone but herself. Typical." Samantha took a long sip of champagne. "No one really talks about you. At least not when I visit. But your absence is like this weight in the room that no one acknowledges." Deborah redecorated the entire house, as if erasing any space you might have occupied would somehow fix things. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Everyone noticed when you left, Rachel. They just will not admit it. Your disappearing act worked too well. It forced them to see themselves, and they did not like the reflection." I felt a strange lightness hearing these words, not vindication but validation. I had not been wrong about how I was treated. I had only been wrong to accept it for so long. "Are you happy now?" Samantha asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Before I could answer, Daniel appeared at my side, handsome in his suit. His hand finding the small of my back in a gesture of support, not possession. "There you are. Everyone's asking to meet the woman of the hour." I introduced them briefly, noting the surprise in Samantha's eyes at this evidence of my new life. When she suggested I might reach out to Jake, that perhaps enough time had passed for reconciliation, I shook my head. "Some bridges are not meant to be rebuilt," I told her. "But I wish them all well." Later that night, in the quiet of our hotel room, Daniel held me as I processed the encounter. "Are you okay?" he asked, always attuned to my emotional state without trying to fix it. "I am," I said, realizing it was true. I think I needed to hear that they noticed I was gone, even if they never noticed I was there. The next morning, I made an anonymous donation to a domestic abuse shelter in my old town, enough to fund their operations for months. Not out of spite or as a message, but because healing sometimes means helping others find their way out too. In the year since I had left, I had built a life that fit me, not one I had to squeeze myself into. I had friends who called just to check in, colleagues who valued my input, a partner who saw me clearly. I had a home filled with thriving plants, colorful art, and natural light. I had peace. The healing had not been linear. There were nights I cried for the family I had wanted them to be, for the child I had lost, for the years I had spent trying to earn love that should have been freely given. There were moments of anger so intense my whole body shook with it, moments of doubt when I questioned my worth. But there were also mornings waking up to sunshine streaming through my window, evenings spent laughing with friends who knew my real laugh, days of creative flow when I lost myself in work that mattered. There were quiet moments with Daniel, building a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine affection, learning that love should never require erasure. The Hamiltons had been right about one thing: if I disappeared, no one in their family would notice, because they had never truly seen me to begin with. What they failed to understand was that disappearing from their lives meant becoming visible in my own. As I prepare to launch my own design studio next month, with Daniel's support and a team of talented designers eager to join me, I often think about that moment at the barbecue. The hot dog raised in mock toast, the words "challenge accepted" that changed everything. They said no one would notice if I disappeared. What they never realized was that I had already been invisible to them for years. The difference is, now I am visible to myself, and that is what truly matters. Have you ever had to walk away from a relationship or situation that was diminishing you? Share your story in the comments below. And if this tale of reclaiming your power resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more stories of transformation, and share with someone who might need to be reminded of their own worth. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away.